Well, hey there. Welcome to another episode of Life Design Plus, where we are mastering the art of living your authentic life. If you have paid attention to the thumbnail, you will notice that this is a replay from when the podcast was called On Our Pursuit. So last May, I was joined by my friend Tony Brown, aka Tony Concept, and we had a great conversation about how he views life as art and talked about his journey as an artist. And if you've been following me at all on social media lately, you've seen Tony's name a lot. He has done some great work for me. I commissioned him to do some artwork for my podcast studio. So there is a Kendrick Lamar painting, a J. Cole painting, no Drake painting for those of you keeping track at home about the big three beef that's going on right now. He also did a flower earlier this year that I grabbed, and I'm anxiously awaiting a custom piece that is based off of The Alchemist. And he and I actually talk about The Alchemist in this episode. This was a busy week for me. I was traveling over the weekend through the beginning of the week at the Shift Conference, which is a conference for those of us in the financial services profession, advisors, life planners, to focus on the human side of financial planning. A lot of us life planners there trying to bring the spirit, mind, body into the money. So I was there. Getting back, not enough time to get the episode. Plus, I wanted to make sure that the book that I was going to do for this month, The 7 Stages of Money Maturity by George Kinder, who's the godfather of life planning, got its just due, and I was not ready to do it. So between the vacation, or not really vacation, between the conference and not being ready to give the book, I thought, what better episode to revisit than Tony Brown as I wait for this piece to come, and he's been all over my social media. So you'll notice a little bit of a different intro music. I missed that old track. The old branding is there on YouTube if you're watching that, but it's still a great conversation. It's still relevant today, and it's fun to go back and visit the archives, which I may do from time to time, just to revisit those great conversations for those of you that are new to the show. So this is my great conversation with Tony Brown from when the podcast was called On Our Pursuit before we rebranded it to Life Design Plus. This was last May. I hope you enjoy it. Have a great day, and thanks for joining me on my pursuit. It's an honor to be a part of yours, and let's keep pursuing. Hello and welcome to another episode of On Our Pursuit. I am still coming down from a high off this conversation. I recorded it yesterday, doing the intro today, and I'm excited to introduce you to my friend Tony Brown, aka Tony Concept. Now, I'm going to do a little bit longer intro because I got to give you the backstory on how Tony and I got connected and how our friendship has evolved, initially via DMs and Instagram. So Tony was the creative director for a conference last year that I went to with a bunch of my friends leading it. The conference was called Future Proof. Advisor Circle was the company, and he was their creative director. And I first saw Tony's work when he started doing illustrations of all of the speakers. And if you go back in some of my content, you'll see that I was a little hurt that I didn't get to speak at this conference. One, because I love public speaking, and two, a bunch of my friends were there. But the third reason I was bummed I didn't get to speak was I didn't get a portrait of me done by Tony. I thought they were really, really cool. So I was aware of his work. I started following him on social media, and then we just started DMing in the background because we had some like interests that were showing up on our feeds. The book, The Alchemist, and some other things. His artwork really resonated with me. He had illustrations of Jordan and Kobe and hip hop artists. So I really enjoyed his work, and we just kind of started to have a friendship that was really living in the DMs. We only got to speak for maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the conference, as crazy as that was. He was working it. I was busy. We said hello. We got to meet in person and maybe had a 5-10 minute conversation. And that was it. Back to the DMs we go. And we had been trying to plan this conversation for a while, and you're going to see this conversation amongst two individuals that you would think have known each other for years and have a good relationship. But this was the first time we spent any amount of time face-to-face, one-on-one, having a good conversation, and it was a lot of fun. Tony has already been finding his way into my life. First off, the boy and the eagle logo that you see on Pursuit and you see on this YouTube channel, I reached out to Tony to have him help me with that. Roman wanted to do a sweatshirt of his favorite basketball players, his Mount Rushmore, if you will. And I reached out to Tony, and he did that for Roman. So Roman created a sweatshirt that has Kobe, MJ, Steph, and LeBron on it, and it was all Tony's work. And then later this summer, you're going to see in the background, we're going to do a refresh of my office and / studio, and there's going to be a big Tupac painting. That is one that I was able to get off of Tony as well. So I'm a huge fan of him and who he is as a person and individual, a huge fan of who he is as an artist and a creative. So having this conversation was awesome. I had a list of what we were going to talk about. I always send my guests an outline. I threw it out. We just went freestyle. We had a few of the things, but the rest of it was just an organic, authentic conversation between two creative individuals going back and forth. So a few things I want you to pay attention to as before we get into this conversation. Be unaware for these things. First, I want you to pay attention to how Tony Brown and how Tony Concept feed off of each other. These two personas that he embodies, depending on what he is doing, help each other grow. So pay attention to that connection and think about the other versions of yourself that you embody. You may not give it another name, but as I share, I have different versions of myself that I express through what it is that I'm wearing. So pay attention to how those two feed each other, and then think about in your journey, in your pursuit, are there different versions of yourself, and how does one version of yourself help the other accomplish what their goals are? Second, pay attention to his intentional approach to how he built his career to support and provide for his passion of art. Being a creative director, getting into arts, getting into video, all of that helped him become the artist that he is today, and it helped him build a corporate career that supported his passion for art. It was very intentional, as you'll hear, even going to what he studied in college to be able to do these things. So pay attention to that, because when you're on your pursuit and you're pursuing your passions, sometimes you have to structure things to support the passion through a career or another avenue that brings more of what you need for the passion to get there. So pay attention to that. And then finally, I thought it was very interesting. Multiple times through the conversation, Tony gives shouts out to people who are very important to his life. So pay attention to the impact that mentors and teachers had on his pursuit. Think back to the ones you've had, but also think about how can you be that mentor? How can you be that teacher for somebody else coming up behind you? We have all this information and knowledge that we gain through our own pursuit, and a lot of us hoard it. How can you give back? How can you help the next Tony Brown or Tony Concept, or whoever it might be coming up behind, and be helping them and be a person that gets shouted out in the future podcast by somebody else? Have that mindset of being a mentor, that abundant mindset of being willing to share your information, share your knowledge, share your expertise with those coming up or those who just might need it. All right, those are just a few things. There's so much in this conversation, as you can tell by the excitement in this intro. As always, at any point during the conversation, whether you're listening to it on the podcast, you're watching it on YouTube, at any time that you find something that Tony talks about or part of his story that inspires you, drop that in the comments. Yes, comments help the videos get seen, and I would love for more people to see and hear these conversations, but I want Tony to hear how his story has helped you. When you go on these podcasts and you share your story and you're vulnerable and you put yourself out there, you don't really get a lot of feedback. And you never know if it really resonated. And the reason we do these things is we want to help other people. We hope that our story and the lessons we've learned will help others. Well, let him know how he helped you in the comments below. All right, so let's get to this awesome conversation with my friend, and it probably won't be the last one, Tony Brown, aka Tony Concept. I just want to make sure, I know it's Tony Brown, but it's just Tony Concept, right? That's the...
Yeah, it's Tony Brown. So it's interesting. My design site is TonyCBrown.net, and then of course Tony CNCP is more my visual art side. So it's kind of like the duality between the two Tonys.
Well, tell me more about the two Tonys. Like why are there two Tonys? What's the difference?
All right, man. So Tony Brown, the designer, the creative director, that is, I attribute Tony Brown to New Orleans, Louisiana, where I was born, to then Charleston, South Carolina, where I went to high school and I made my mates there, and, I think Tony Concept is more going into, this, I guess this character. I got the name Concept for breakdancing. So I'm a dancer by nature, and one of my favorite movies back in the day was Beat Street. And I think Beat Street it's an old school breaking movie, like Wild Style, Beat Street. This really, was in New Orleans. I'm watching this and I was in love with hip hop. You know what I mean? Hip hop was basically the foundation for everything that I fell in love with, music, art, graffiti art, of course. And then I essentially went to school in Sarasota, Florida. My first year as an illustration major, and I left my first year to go to New York to Pratt Institute. And, I went to New York because I knew that's where the B-Boys was at. That's where I was going to be outside doing my graffiti work. And, that's how I got the name Concept, man. So, it actually started from writing graffiti. And, with that being said, man, Tony Concept, I attribute to more, New York and, my love for hip hop and all things that are connected to the four basics, of course, rap, DJing, graffiti art, and, you know, breaking and b-boying, you know what I mean? So, two in the same, but, you know, two different aspects. So, you know, you go to my design site, it's TonyCBrown.net, and then you go to see some of the visual art and some of the other things I do. That's TonyCNCP.com.
So when you're creating, like, do you embody Tony Concept when you're like, are you a different version of yourself when you are in that lane, or is this just purely for like the business side of things?
It's interesting. I mean, you know, I had a mentor of mine that told me, you know, Tony, you know, when you do your business, your hat's to the front. And then when you do, you know, your art, you know, your hat's to the back, right? You can't really do both or whatever. And it's kind of like that sometimes. I mean, Tony Brown is the creative director. You know, I'm all things creative, in terms of design, in graphic design, in illustration. And I think Tony Concept, man, is more, you know, in the world of fine art, visual art, you know, and, I try to blend the two together as much as possible, because I think as a creative director, you know, we pull from our own life experiences to give companies and brands that authenticity. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, I can also, you know, use that Tony Brown side to do better business when it comes to, you know, the visual art world and the gallery world and in all parts in between. You know, you kind of have to, for artists, man, out there, you know, I never wanted to be a struggling artist, right? So as soon as I got out of school, even my major, I chose, you know, illustration and communication design, and I ended up getting a film animation degree. But, you know, it was all about, you know, having a balance of creative and business and knowing how to wear both hats, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't have two names, but I express different versions. I express different versions of myself through what I wear. And I recognize this over the last couple of years. So when I am like the professional side, I'm wearing like denim button-up shirts and like some boots and things. But then when I'm more in a creative mode, that's when I have like my graphic tees, my hip hop tees, like, and it's funny because like when I put those clothes on, the reason I asked you if you embody Tony Concept is like when I put those clothes on, I embody that version of myself. I'm more creative when I'm wearing certain clothes, and I'm more buttoned up and polished, and I feel different when I'm wearing. So like you can catch me wearing like maybe one of 3 different styles, and like that's a different version of me that day when I'm dressed like that.
It's like a nuanced thing, man. I think as I'm getting older, you know, there's a term called code switching where, you know, like you go into your office setting, you talk different, you kind of move different, you dress different. For me, I've been trying to merge as much as I can, you know, because I want to be the most authentic self. And I think each one of us has like this duality side. I mean, of course, when you put a suit on, you have a different self-confidence. You have a different, mindset, you know, but you're still intrinsically the same person, man. So I think that's what everyone should do, man. Just what you said, you know, I think you have to read the room. You have to learn how to kind of be a chameleon in this game, man, to be successful. And some people have a problem with that, you know, but for me, I think that's the way to go. You know?
I'm going to challenge you on that. I'm not supposed to challenge my guests, but I think what you should do. So like the different personas that I embody through my clothes, it's not for the room. It's for me.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I have no problem going, if I have no problem going up on stage and talking, wearing, you know, I went to a conference and wore a Jesus Shuttlesworth t-shirt walking around, and like, I have no problem doing that. It's for me, I think you hit something right. You need to be your authentic version of yourself. And for some of us, maybe it is more authentic for us to dress for the room. So like maybe that is the right way for you. But for me, I'm dressing for me, and I don't give a shit what anybody else thinks about me. Like I don't know how old you are, but like when I turned 40, something went off inside of me where I care less about what people think. Like I want to be liked, but I'm not doing things to appease other people. I'm doing things that make me feel my best, because then I end up being my best.
And I think your mindset is like what I had to learn. You know what I mean? So we're actually speaking the same language. It just took me a while to get to that understanding. We're really saying the same thing. So it's not necessarily a challenge. It's just for me, it took me a while to just feel confident and comfortable in different rooms, you know what I mean? And figuring out how to position myself. Cause there's been times where, I've worn a suit in the situation and felt like, man, I should have just came with my regular steez, I probably I would have had that extra level of confidence I needed, so it's a learning thing, man. It's a learning curve, and I think like you said, as you get older, you kind of figure that out for yourself and why you're doing things, and it has to be self-motivated, right?
It totally is learned. And I also would be, naive to say that like you may have had to think about it a little bit more walking into rooms being a black man in a
Hmm.
business setting
Oh, indeed.
versus I'm a white guy walking in and I have a little bit more freedom that's given to me. So understand why you might think about it a little bit differently than I would, just those personal experiences.
Man, that's been a liberating thing in
Mhm.
itself, me being tattooed, being a black man, I've really had to figure out the best way, to present myself. And sometimes it's good to show people, you know, um, I've countless times getting on an elevator, with someone that might not be familiar with me and sparking up a conversation, maybe I'm the guy that they needed to talk to change their
Mhm.
mindset on, hey, I could have judged this dude, but this dude's, super intelligent. We had a great conversation. So maybe just the look, feel that I express, can open the world up to them. So they're not as closed minded and thinking that everyone is monolith,
Mhm.
in terms of who they are and what they look like
Mhm.
outside. You gotta give people that chance, man, to get into what their thought
Yep.
process is. Yeah.
I want to go back to your craft and art. You gave a little bit of how you got into art, from the break dancing to the graffiti, and that brought you in there. But like growing up, did you want to be an artist? Was this something you thought you would end up pursuing, or how did you get to being, a non-starving artist?
Man, so I had an art teacher in the 12th grade, man, Miss Bonnie Stabler, man. Miss Bonnie Stabler, if you're out there, I love you. She's and I always knew that I loved art. Of course, I was into sports and other things. I came from well, at the time, my father was absent, during some of the bigger moments of my life. And we then, and later on in life, kind of rekindled our relationship, man. But, my mom always put art in front of me. It was one of those things as the only child that, it captivated my attention. But when I met Bonnie Stabler, in the 12th grade, my art teacher, she had a vested interest in me, and we took a trip to New York, and I went to the Museum of Modern Art, and I saw Salvador Dali for the first time. I saw Rene Magritte for the first time. And Rene Magritte, I had Persistence of Memory, this big eye painting that he did in my bedroom, right? And for some reason, when I sat in front of it and I saw it in real life, man, my eyes watered up,
Hmm.
right? And my teacher came to me, and I was just like, I kind of like, I was trying to act tough, at that time. And I told her, I was like, I didn't understand why my eyes watered up. I didn't, really understand like what that meant. And something changed in me, man. It was my connection to art. I realized it was like an emotional connection. And that's when I knew. I was like, man, I want to do this. I want to do art in some capacity. Didn't really know what facet I would fall into. But, I used to draw, on my friends' clothes and stuff like that. We would, airbrush and paint, stuff on our jackets in school. So I always had an affinity for art and design. And then, meeting Miss Stabler, making the decision to go to art school, I jumped in full fledged, man. And I just knew I was going to find a way. In terms of finding a way to not be a starving artist, I was an animation major. I wanted to do film animation, because I wanted a
Hmm.
job coming straight out of school. I saw like a lot of painters and illustrators struggling, kind of when they got out to find work in terms of freelance. So I wanted something I could build a resume on and jump into. But what happened subsequently is I got out of school and I had an opportunity to start making apparel for a spot. This is called Nubian Heritage. It was downtown Brooklyn, right across the street from where the new Barclays is now. And I had someone believe in Richelieu Dennis. He believed in my vision, bought me a single color press. I got a buddy of mine to come and work with me, and we just started making. At the time, I had a line that's called Make Love, and it was mostly iconic images of Bob Marley and a cultural icon, Stevie Wonder, and I would print silk screen on thrift, and from there, just getting an affinity for making apparel. I ended up getting my first job at Echo Unlimited. And, that was like the Marines for me of design. It was a brand that I had, of course, admired from the graffiti scene, you know what I mean? And Mark Echo. And, I took my first job as a graphic designer creating, men's graphic tees, and the rest was history. I found a career, in terms of apparel and apparel design. And that's how I got my intro into the game as an art director. Well, first a graphic designer, then a senior designer, then an art director, and which leads me to where I'm at today as a CD, a creative director, doing more things outside of the world of fashion,
Which I love what your story highlights, and that, when I think of you, I know you're a creative director, but I think of you as the artist. Like, I'm bummed I don't have, so I have a POC painting of yours that I got to get stretched out. So I'm trying to find somebody in town. I found out that not a lot of artists want to stretch other artists' work because they're afraid of messing it up. So I got this big 4x5 foot POC painting that I'm waiting for. But I think of you as the artist, because that's what I get to see more of, and that's what I'm fascinated with.
Yeah.
But I think it's smart that you thought, okay, chances are if I go out right out the gate, starving artist is where I'm going to end up because I got to build my following. But you went and you found a career that you would enjoy, that you would be good at, that would allow you to save and build and all of that, but also allowed you to still have time for your other creative interests, your passion. And I think so many times, I want people to follow their passions, and I want people to do those things, but your passion doesn't always have to be your career. It doesn't necessarily have to be the career right away. It's just doing this thing that you love and enjoy. So I love that you found a career that allowed you to provide for you and your family and the things you need to, but also fed into the creative outlet, but also allowed you to still have time to paint as well, and do the art as well.
Man, I had a mentor of mine. He said, Tony, you're 9 to 5, you're going to give a lot of yourself to whatever company that you work with. But, from, 5 or 6 or 7 to 9 or 7 to 10 or 7 to 12, you need to be building your mousetrap, and that analogy really stuck with me. It's always been a balance of working kind of corporate to sustain as an artist, and then, putting that extra time in, which at times, is pretty tough, but, it's a way to that's what keeps my creative juices going, man. I'm always continuously building on my visual art, but then, I also, in the process of that, developed a love for just design and, creative, working with different teams and on different projects that are outside the world of fine arts. So any artist out there, young artists, man, find something that may sustain you. It's not a cop out, you know what I mean? But also build your mousetrap on the side.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if there was any conflict from within the art community that you weren't all in on your art. And this is somebody as an outside. Right. I would wonder if other artists would look at you and say, well, you're not a starving artist. You're not committed to the craft. You're not a real artist. Did you have to battle any of that?
I mean, it's an internal battle, and that's a great question because it is ever present. I think, some gallery owners or galleries, they may look at you like you're, 1 foot in the door, you know what I mean? And it takes total dedication actually to advance sometimes, right? But in my situation, with me having, little ones and wanting to build a family, I saw a lot of visual artists and friends of mine that were having these like flourishing art careers, but they were by themselves. And, to this day, I got some guys that are hugely successful, but I think having a family and my family values, that kind of played into the aspect of having it to do it my way. I always wanted to have a family and provide. And that was a decision that I made, and it might not be the same decision for someone else. You know what I mean? Because in the art world, if you're 100, it takes 100% dedication. I just found a way to kind of keep both lines, moving up kind of adjacent to each other. And, for me, that's what works best.
One might say that you found a way to live your authentic life. You've constructed both to allow you to do what you need to do, but also what you love to do the most.
I mean, as a designer, it's just like the visual art aspect of it. I'm constantly wanting to learn, and I constantly, want to elevate in terms of, what I do on the computer, in terms of just, graphic design or creative direction, art direction. I'm just a student, and when you find your passion, it's kind of easy. It makes it, a easy load to carry, because there's ups and downs in both sides, working, corporate and learning, the human nature aspect of it, and being able to be a good communicator and function with other folks in that realm. And then, of course, even in the gallery world, learning how to promote yourself as an individual artist, it's just it's a dance. So for me, the easiest thing I can say is my love for design and the fine arts is what keeps me, tapped in.
Could Tony Concept be as good as he is without Tony Brown, and vice versa? Like, does the creative director need the design guy, and vice versa? Like, would you be not as good if you weren't doing both?
Man, that's a great question. And I'm going to say for me, I think I'm better because there's so many things I learned in this corporate journey I've taken in terms of design and in art that spills itself over into, the fine art and the stuff I create. I think, just from typography itself, man, I went from writing graffiti. And I had a teacher, man, Richard Luna at Pratt, man, my typography teacher. This guy was so brilliant. He come to class late because he's like looking at a new sign that goes up, in the city at some restaurant or whatever, just, and his love for that, man, trickled down into me. And I think I went from graffiti art, writing letters, to then admiring typography and letters and design and the Swiss Grid and Ogilvy and, these design houses that created, beautiful work, using type, and then finding that, that carries into my painting and my art in that way. So I'm using the same brain, in both worlds, but pulling from, different parts of it, that makes sense.
Makes total sense. I didn't grow up as somebody who loved the arts. Like, I was in the advanced art class and I did some good stuff, but I didn't love it. And like now where I am today, I wish I would have loved it more because there's so much about the world that you operate in that just fascinates me. Like you mentioned design and typography. Like I spent a little bit of time reading just different books on branding and design. And like, there's so much that goes into these common designs we see day to day that we don't even understand, like the placement and why use a circle versus a triangle. Like nothing that we see that we love is by accident. There's so much thought and theory behind design, which I just think is fascinating. And then I've more recently been paying more and more attention to typography and just the fonts and all these different things. Like I think it's really interesting and fascinating that I wish I knew more about it, and I wish I had more time to spend learning it, which is why I need to quit having conversations with artists, because you guys make me want to pull me more into it. I don't have the time for it.
Well, look, I'm a firm believer, man. This is, I guess, existential. It's not like a religious thing, more or less, but I believe in the creator. I believe as an artist, right? If I look at the tree outside of my window here, it's crafted with, 1,000 shades of green, right? And the creator essentially, is the ultimate painter. You know what I mean? I think inherently in all of us, we are all creators. Like if you go to religion, it says, we're made out of the image of. So if we come from a creator, I think we're inherent creators ourselves. And I don't think you should, I don't think you should be hard on yourself in terms of not picking that journey, because art and creative is a journey that is ever present in all of us, man. I've heard stories of, this. I was fascinated. This guy, his whole life, he worked, I guess he's like a factory worker or something. I can't remember his name. He worked on a farm. And then, once he retired at the age of 70, he started creating these sculptures, on his land and his property. And then this property becomes like a national landmark, in a late aspect of his life. And this is a guy that was never dedicated to art or being a visual artist. But, when he had the time, he then focused and found a way to get his creativity out. And I think, just like you said earlier on in the conversation, your creativity comes in the form of how you dress, which music you listen to, how you eat a burger. You might like the ketchup to just be on the outer rim. Yeah, yeah. And that's why I started Life is Art. You know what I mean? And that's this new venture I'm, in where I'm drawing parallels to life and art, because there's an art in everything that we do. So without you having to dial deep into the knowing of typography and this and that, I mean, aesthetically, you're walking around and you're creative directing your whole life. You know what I mean?
I like that. I'm the creative director of my own life. I've never thought about it that way.
For
I
sure.
do agree that we all have an inner creator. I've written about it some, and I think that maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome's kept me from doing more into it, because like when I think of myself as a creator, it's more of the content creation, writing, podcasting, which is an expression. And I'm getting more and
Yeah.
more in tune with my inner creator. And I could see myself one day when the boys are older and I have more time, starting to mess around with painting and just seeing what it's like. But the evidence, all
Hmm.
the evidence I need that we're inner creators is just to look at us when we're kids. Like every
Yep.
child knows how to create, whether it's their imagination, building blocks, coloring, like they haven't been jaded by the world yet. And the one thing they know how to
Right.
do, even before they speak, is to begin creating. So we have the inner creator inside of us. And I do believe that for those of us that are struggling to find our authentic life or what makes us happy, that allowing that inner creator to come out in whatever form it might be, dressing, gardening, like to your point, everything we do is a way for us to express ourselves. Sorry to interrupt. It's that time of the show where I make a little pitch. The Daily Notes. I have been writing a daily note for over 118 days in a row now. There are over 1,000 people between the email list and LinkedIn who are getting it. And you're going to hear more and more about it because I think these daily notes really are that good. And if I don't believe in them, then I should probably stop doing it, right? Well, I just want to put them on your radar yet again. The daily notes can be found over at justincastelli.io. You go to the top of the page, you see daily notes, you can click on them. And in every single note, there's the opportunity for you to subscribe to it. Subscribe to it. They're short posts that are all built around the connection of spirit, mind, body, and money and pursuing your authentic life. These posts are not designed to necessarily give you answers, but to give you prompts, to give you things to think about, to help you recognize all of the good things helping you move you towards your authentic life that are already in your life. So these are not me telling you how to live your authentic life. This is me giving thoughts that come to me through meditation or random thoughts that come throughout the day that I think might help you along your pursuit of your authentic life. So don't go to them thinking you're going to find the answers. Go to them thinking that you're going to be inspired to find the answers from within, because that is where the answers lie. I don't know what your authentic life looks like. I can't tell you what it is. All I can tell you is that it exists, and I can give you thoughts and ideas and quotes and ways to help you find and manifest that life into reality, and that way let you live the life that you want to live, that you're supposed to live, rather than life you feel like you've been told to live. So the daily notes, not going to be the end. I'm going to be talking about them more, trying to get more and more people to find them because I think they are that important and they are that good. Every day may not hit, but eventually there's going to be a daily note that's going to be a light bulb moment for you that will be worth it. So justincastelli.io, daily notes at top, or you can also subscribe to LinkedIn, but go ahead and go to the email list because I'd much rather have that, because then I can control the messages and what I send to you more often. So email is always better, but at the end of the day, if LinkedIn fits your preference, go there as well. I just want you to find these notes and read them, and then share with me back how they resonate with you and what you would like to see in future daily notes. The daily notes write themselves. I just interpret them and get them down on paper, but always welcome to get feedback and ideas for future daily notes in the future, obviously. All right. Sorry to interrupt, a little bit longer than usual, but I had a lot I wanted to get out. Let's get back to this amazing conversation with Tony. It's like one of the things I do that's a lot of fun is if you were to go to my Instagram feed and look at my stories, I try to put music behind it, and it's always going to be hip hop. But I'm intentionally picking the song. I'm spending 10 minutes scrolling through songs to find the song that has either
Your CD,
an obvious
man.
connection to it, or maybe there's a very subtle connection that maybe one or two people will connect on. But I promise you, every single song that shows up on my Instagram feed was intentionally picked as a way for me to express myself.
Man, and that's exactly what I'm saying when I say, you're the creative director of your life, man. And I tell anyone, man, whenever you get in a rut or maybe your thoughts aren't clear, creating something has always been a way for me to bring my energy levels up, to refocus or dial in my mindset. Like, I think, when I hit periods of or lows, because every day isn't always peachy, man. It's I go straight to creating, or I try to write something. I've always kept a sketchbook, and I think, man, just keeping a little Moleskine book, and you can put a doodle in there. You can write your thoughts down. I think that's the glue, that keeps us, going. I think even, why we get addicted to things like Instagram is because the creator in all of us, is kind of sparked, when we put a post up or we curate something for other people to see. So on many small levels, man, we're creating, and I wouldn't even, I wouldn't downplay, your knack to put the right music or the right, vibe to something that you're trying to give to someone, man. Everything is intentional, right?
You mentioned Moleskine, so I have a notebook that I carry around, but I wanted to show it real quick because I had it branded with the logo that you created for Pursuit. So the boy and the eagle, there it is.
Oh, wow.
The boy and the eagle logo
sick.
was a Tony Concept
Awesome.
creation. So
Now look, so that's a clear example. You got Tony Brown on the Moleskine, with some design. And then you got the Tupac painting, which is on the concept vibe, man. So I'm gonna tell everybody this. I'm gonna give some game right now. This is my remarkable. This thing is like my favorite. This is one of those like I don't leave home without it type of deals, and it's what I do all of my I do all of my note taking on it, and let me see if I can. I do like all of my note taking on it and stuff like that. Of course, draw and doodle, but I'm the guy that has a closet full of sketchbooks. You know what I mean? So I keep this in with this particular remarkable. Like it doesn't distract me with the internet and my apps and stuff. It's purely for note taking and drawing and stuff like that. So I recommend just like just like you, just to have something to jot down things, man, and go back to it as well.
So let's just assume that somebody watching or listening to this is struggling with, finding that authentic life, figuring out what their passions are. And if tapping into their inner creator is a way to help them figure that out, but they don't view themselves as creative or a creator, how would you recommend they first figure out or give themselves the freedom to do that? Like what's an easy step for them to take to start to tap into their creator?
I think the easiest step to take in tapping into your creative spirit is finding out where your love lies. If you love food and you love to cook, if you love movies and you love to watch movies or whatever, if you love comedy and watching comedy shows or whatever, find what your love is. And I think once you have a general understanding of, man, I love this, I do this for free, the universe is gonna present itself to facilitate something that helps you connect to it more. For me, I meditate and focus on purpose. Helping other people is one of the things that I want to do. And I didn't know how to help other people. I thought, I would beat myself up because I say, man, I should be at the soup kitchen, or I should be at a youth program or something, talking to kids. But, with my work-life balance, it's like, how do I help people in a way? And I just, meditated and focused on that. And it led me to, man, maybe doing tutorials or maybe teaching, is going to be the way that you can get there. And that's what led to this new venture that I'm up to now, man, doing some tutorials via online and, maybe just pulling people into my world and showing them my process, so you start with finding what you love, and then you connect it to the easiest way to do it. I think we get stuck sometimes because it's like a business, right? Like people, if you're a technician, the E-Myth is one of my favorite business books, in terms of learning the 3 aspects of who you are, a manager, an entrepreneur, or a technician. And I'm more of a technician. So I'll say I want to leave my job and create a job, but then I'll work harder and longer at that in the job that I created, as opposed to where I just left, because I just want to work. And be a technician. So finding the easy route is where that managerial entrepreneurial aspect comes in. It's like, how can I embrace my passion and my creativity, but what's the easiest way to doing that, in the simplest way? Start with the simple things, man. Like, you don't have to have this grandiose plan. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So, if your love is cooking, it might just be like, I'm gonna do one recipe a week, and try something, with items I already have in the house. You know what I mean? So to me, it's identifying your love and then finding an easy way to make time or carve time out for it.
And I think an important step after you do that is then you got to share it with somebody. Like, you can't create just for yourself. Like, once you do it a little bit and you get a little bit of confidence, then you've got to share it with the world to let it live and let other people know about it.
Show Your Work, great book. You know what I mean? I recommend that. I can't remember my guy's name but he also wrote Still Like an Artist, but Show Your Work, one of my favorites. You know what I mean? For anyone who's not confident in terms of putting out what they create or what they, want to do. And that's another thing, man. Stop worrying about folks, man. I think that's what it inhibits us a lot when we think about our passions. We are concerned with what other people think. And the sooner you get over that, the sooner you get over yourself, the sooner you'll get on that road of self-discovery. And
that's one of those things that, like, you have to come to that conclusion, the realization on your own. Like, that's not the first time a listener or a viewer of this show has heard that, and it's not going to be the last time. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, Tony's not going to make you believe that. I'm not going to make you believe that, but I believe that the more times you hear it, the sooner you're going to realize it yourself, because you're going to be more aware of that experience. It's going to help you realize, oh, like, I really don't need to worry about other people, and I really just need to do this for myself. And then once you understand that, it's like a cheat code that allows you to go. Speaking of confidence, I wanted to
I'm gonna say one thing too. One of the, I usually have Nipsey is in my office, but there's a quote from Nipsey Hussle, one of the late great MCs, man, that I dig. And he said, man, if it's not hard, if it's not difficult, then you're not doing it right. You know what I'm saying? So embrace the challenge too, embrace, go to the path of resistance. And Justin, I was telling you the same thing about starting my YouTube channel. Like, I looked at you and I was super inspired to see, your output and how connected to your belief systems in terms of outreach and putting your products out there. That gave me a lot of, courage, I guess, more or less, man. And I think, it's one of those things. Go toward the things that you're thinking in your head in terms of you as a creative and you're resisting. That's what you have to go towards.
Have you read The War of Art by Steven Pressfield?
The War of Art. I'm gonna jot that one down, but I'll
send that to you with Rick Rubin's book. He talks about resistance. So, like, that's Steven Pressfield's known for, like, this term of resistance and, like, how we resist. So it's a really quick, short read. You'll like it, but it's really good. Awesome. I wanted to go back real quick, and then I want to hit Life is Art, and then I also want to revisit some of our conversation about creating content. Actually, before I do that, the thing I wanted to share with the audience is, like, the cool thing about this is Tony mentioned as he goes down this journey of creating content on YouTube and building this channel out, which I'm really excited about because Procreate has intimidated me since I bought it like a year ago. I never use it. I can't figure out how to navigate it. So, like, I almost feel like I told somebody a few weeks before you dropped that class that I needed a class on Procreate, and then you drop it. So, like, I'm super excited about that.
The manifestation is real.
It's real. But Tony looking at me finding inspiration, I told him before we hit record that I'm inspired by the work that he's putting out already, that the amount of volume of content that he's creating and how good it is and creative it is inspiring me. And the reason I share that is, we always spend time looking up at others and being inspired by others or trying to chase others, that we don't realize that somebody's looking back at us. So, like, you're just starting doing YouTube, and I've been doing it for a while, yet here I am looking at you, new to the YouTube game, being inspired and in awe of what it is that you're doing. So, like, that imposter syndrome that people talk about, it's real, and you got to shut that down because there's, no matter what, somebody's going to be looking at you wishing they could do it as good as you are, and you're looking at somebody else always chasing.
I mean, for designers, I look at Chris Do, and I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Chris Do is one of the greatest content creators, known to man in terms of the creative world of art and designers. And one of the things he was saying was like in the initial stages of him doing content, he didn't like the sound of his voice. He didn't like the way, he looked on camera and all of these things that he had to get over. Now the guy's got what, 500,000 followers on LinkedIn, some million, some more followers, on other platforms. So being vulnerable, right? Having that vulnerability, and that even goes back to what you're saying about watching kids. I've become a better painter just painting with my daughter and watching her paint. Because she's just not inhibited. She's just like, this is what I like and this is what I'm going to do. And that's helped me. You know what I mean?
I just found Chris Do within the last maybe 6 or 7 months. How I just now found him, I don't know. But yeah, I do know who he is and have been following him since then. I'm going back to confidence, and then we hit life as art.
Yep.
I wrote a daily note. So once a month, my goal is to go down to the Indianapolis Museum of Art and just spend the first part of the day walking around. And then spending the second part of the day working. And I wrote a blog post that I basically was like, who determines what gets in the museum? And my reasoning for that is like, there are certain pieces of art you see and you're like, that's amazing. Nobody in the world could do that. But then there are a good amount of pieces that are in the museum you look at and you're like, Tony's daughter probably did that. Like it doesn't look like it's something that I couldn't do. Right. And it's like, well, how did that person become so well known doing something that's so abstract that it looks like anybody could do, and it's up there? My question to you is, how did you develop the confidence to stick with it, and not necessarily, maybe you did worry, but not necessarily worry about making it into the museum. Like that wasn't necessarily the end goal. Right. If that were to happen, great, but that wasn't why you did it, because art really is up to the person viewing it. And there are a lot of really great successful artists that it is just kind of random, the art that they put out, but because they built this brand and they are who they are, now all of a sudden it becomes famous, when somebody else who's a nobody could do something just as good, but they'll never be in the museum.
Well, one of the big things early on in my art that I realized is don't compare, right? And then what I realized about what you're saying, just to touch on that point really quick, a lot of the things that we see in the museum and we say, man, this is like, my daughter could do this or whatever. But the question is, was it first? So a lot of the stuff that we see in the museum that we think this is crap work, it was first. You know what I mean? And when you do something and it's first, someone that comes behind you is just copying what you're doing. You know what I mean? So like if you look at some of I love the 60s and the 70s of modern art, because you'll go and you'll just see Art Deco piece, and it's just like one side of the canvas painted red and the other side of the canvas painted blue. But this is done in like 1959, 1960, when nobody was like, it wasn't even considered art. So that's why even with your podcast, or even with cracking the mold on something that's just a thought, it might not be great to everyone, but it may be first. You know what I mean? And that's a big aspect of it. I think I tell people this all the time in terms of being an artist. The hard part about being an artist is not creating good artwork. It's staying an artist. You know what I mean? And I think what I ended up doing is, after I read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, right? I dedicated myself to 10,000 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like that was a really strong point for me to say, well, you know what? I might not, make it to this museum or get this price point for this piece of work today, but I know if I dedicate and commit, if I make a commitment to my work, hopefully, God willing, when I'm an old man, I die surrounded by beautiful paintings, and then so this goes back to, if you change the meaning of a thing, you change the thing, right? And for me, art has become less about, I'm gonna continue my entrepreneurial ideas and continue to elevate my family and everything, and create generational wealth and do all of these things that I want to do. But, at the crux of it, is to continue my art journey. You know what I mean? and continue to stay creative, So I kind of changed the meaning. Before, when I was younger, man, I thought I was just going to paint one painting. It was going to sell for $250,000 and I was going to be next Basquiat, and then I realized as I learned the game, it takes a lot of work, a lot of learning. And that's when I then changed the meaning of it. I changed the meaning. I think, if you do something that you love, you do it well, you continue to learn, you'll reap the benefits of what you're, aspiring for. And that's with, manifesting. You'll manifest what you want. But it takes commitment and dedication, so I kind of, it was long winded, there, but I there's something in there, you understand.
Yeah. I was already making a mental note of a couple clips I'm going to make out of that, but no, I think that, and I think that transcends art. Like, I think that's true of everything. And I think that also falls back on, when it's your passion, you mentioned it earlier, you're going to do it because you love to do it, regardless if you get paid. And I think that when you are doing the things that you enjoy the most, that make you the happiest, you end up putting out your best work, and in time it will catch up. Like, I think about the people who charge like $20,000 to go be a paid speaker. They're not getting paid $20,000 for the next speech. It's all of the speaking they did leading up to that allows them to.
Oh man, it's all of the times that they bombed, or they were chewing gum, or they forgot what they were gonna say. It's all of those times. It's a cumulative process, and that's why Picasso, when the lady comes up to him in the restaurant and says, "Can you draw something on this napkin for me?" He draws it and says, "Hey, that's 40 grand." She's like, "Well, you just did that in like 5 seconds." He was like, "No, I did that. That was 40 years right there on that napkin." You know what I mean? And those type of things, man, that's what keeps my engine running. You know what I mean? So, cause art is so subjective, and sometimes, like, even this conversation, man, someone may value this and it may change their life. But to some, they might be like, I'm not interested. So, you just gotta kind of like keep your engine going.
Let's go to changing lives. Tell me more about Life is Art. Tell me about this project you're working on.
Okay, so Life is Art, man. I wanted to figure out a way, in today's era, I think content is everything. And I think even when we talk about Tony Brown and then Tony Concept, I realized as a creative, creating content is an aspect, with the addition of AI and all these different models that are happening, the human input is still very important. And I think creating content is just where we're going naturally. My kids, before I even started talking about YouTube, they were running around the house talking about like and subscribe, based on the stuff they look at. So, for me, Life is Art was the easiest avenue. I'm really intrigued on everyday lives of people and stories, and how life intersects with art and creativity. So initially I put a deck together, and, I started my YouTube page, and I'm doing some, tutorials, to kind of get my engine going, trying to get those first posts up. But it's a mission, man, for me to do exactly like you're doing, man, to speak to people in the creative world specifically, about, their rituals, what makes them tick, doing in-studio visits. And I have such a dope collection of peers and people that inspire me. I'm like, man, I got to figure out a way to change other people's lives, by showing that there's so many conversations I have in a buddy studio, that I would say, man, this would be great, if other people can, be a fly on the wall to this. So that's my mission, man. And I'm just getting started. So anybody out there, man, go to my YouTube and subscribe. But, it's a long game I made a commitment to. And, for me, Life is Art. It's about showing my life, and my family. I'm showing, I have the kids. Last night I made a piece of content, and my wife's talking to me in the kitchen with her face mask on and some some stuff, or if she didn't want to get on camera. But all of that, man, I'm just want to bring people into my world, because I think it's important to show, there's different prototypes of people that are out there as creators in their day to day, you know what I mean? And it's important for us to have these conversations and tell these stories to the youth, them, as I call it, the youngsters, man, out there that, just need an outlet. I didn't even know when I was, say in the 12th grade, I didn't understand there was so many different avenues I can go with art. I just thought like, you either a painter or or you make album covers or something. I always wanted to do that. I was like, how they do that? There was a couple things I knew, but man, there's so many aspects of art and creativity and so many avenues to go, it's a curiosity in me that kind of started Life is Art. I'm curious about other people and their processes, and I want to learn while teaching. And I think, for us to have self mastery, they say you have to teach, and for me, this is a great way to do it.
I think you're going to not only help other creatives, but I think you're going to pull more people into the creative world. Like people like myself, like I heard of Procreate. I've seen people use it. I downloaded it and I was like, I can't navigate this for shit. And I even would love to be able to place a picture under it and trace it. And I'm okay saying, all right, I'm going to trace to learn how to do some design work. That's still art. That's not cheating, but that'll help me learn some things. But I don't even know how to stack layers. And I've watched some YouTube tutorials. But you're going to bring people who might have an inner creator that wants to, that they're intimidated by this program. And if they can watch some videos with you, that's good. And then thinking about trying to pull the youth in, they watch YouTube. That's where their entertainment is. Like my boys are on that all the time, and TikTok, as much as I hate it. But you showing a little bit of who you are and your personality is going to make you somebody that they want to watch, because it's not just the tutorial. They're getting invested in you and who you are, and your kids are learning who you are, and they're liking you as well. So I think that's a great way to pull the youth in, is to kind of meet them where they are and say, all right, I'm not just going to show you how to create the work. I'm going to show you how you can balance that and be a dad and be present and have a corporate career and do all of these things to create a great life that they would just miss out if it was just Procreate tutorials.
Yeah, I think another thing, man, we have to stop doing is, hoarding information. I think just like you said, like tracing a image, if you want to, there's creators out there, they want to know how to do something in 45 minutes that they can then in turn, use as a part of their business model or a part of, their day to day. So for me, it's just giving game, man. I'm always about that. I think the younger generation is less focused on how things, the traditional quote unquote ways of getting things done, but how do I get it done? I mean, we see that with, like TikTok creators now who are, like TikTok comedians or whatever. They started making these 17-second skits with, I forgot the platform before, TikTok, but you get these creators that are making these short reels, and now these guys are major celebrities. You know what I mean? It's all about finding the fastest route from point A to point B, and of course, there's tradition and study and practice that goes into it. But my whole purpose is to not hoard information. It's to give you game, man, give you ways to get to your end goal faster, man. And I'm okay with that. And I'll take whatever criticism comes with it.
The abundant mindset will always win. And Vine was the old 17-second stuff. I want to talk about another project you had, the Alchemist Project. You just released that long ago. Tell me more about that. And the reason is The Alchemist is a very important book to me in my journey, especially over the last few years. So when I saw you were working on that and doing some cool stuff with that, what's the story behind The Alchemist Project?
Man, so The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho, this book, man, The Alchemist is about a shepherd who then, has a vision, has a dream, and decides to, follow his dream and leave this comfortable life that he's established as a shepherd with his herd, and sell all of his stuff and, go toward the pyramids to find this treasure. And it's a journey. And in that journey, he gets duped. He faces failure. He finds love and has to make some really tough decisions, about his journey. And, for me, I decided to, I decided to do some paintings that basically were, to do some paintings that kind of personified, how I envisioned it, It was one of those things. I don't know if I have, let me see if I have any of that work. I got a couple of those paintings here.
I love that nip.
So looking at some of the, oh man, with some of the Alchemist paintings, man, let's see here, like this one was Santiago. This one, I don't know if you see my cursor here, but this was the boy on his mission, and I have, a couple of different street art aesthetic interpretations of some of these. Like the painting that's behind me is this green one, and it has entrepreneur, it has 10X. That's that Grant Cardone for you. But to me, it actually, if you look in the corner, you can go to my website in TonyCNCP.com and see, but there's some pyramids in the corner there, and there's flight, there's a feather, and there's this plane flying. And to me, that personifies this journey. It's a connection of me traveling through Brooklyn, New York, during my journey of discovering myself as an artist. There's, the sneakers hanging from the power line. To me, that's like how I envisioned the Alchemist in my head. It was like it's a graphic design interpretation of that. So I had a really good time, kind of working on that. This Respect the Hustle. It's all about the journey. And to me, this is what my journey looks like. And that's just kind of like a small, look into how I interpreted that book. But that book changed me, man. It changed my life, man. It really put the battery in my back that, if you have a vision, you should follow it without, thinking of the consequences. Of course, that's we only have one life to live, man, and you're not promised tomorrow, man. So if you have a vision for yourself, go for it. And in my interpretation of it may be different than someone else's, but I love to take things that inspire me and try to, kind of repurpose them in a way that I see them. And that's what art is about as well. It's like I started really painting because I wanted to paint the things I didn't see when I went to the gallery,
Now, I love The Alchemist book. I love the pieces you did. And I especially love the ones that had the legs of Jordan on the free throw line. Like the one where you see the upper body, like everybody recognizes that. But me being a big Jordan fan, I recognized the knee down. Like I knew exactly whose legs those were and what photo that was just because I'm a big Jordan fan. But like The Alchemist, the story for me, I've told it before on an old podcast, but real quick, I bought that book years ago, and I think I got 6 pages in. I put it down. And the kind of cool thing is just the way the universe works and these things find you when they're supposed to. I bought the book because I was watching a Kobe Bryant interview, and he said that was his all-time favorite book. Like Kobe is 1B and Jordan's 1A for me. So Kobe's favorite book, I buy it. And I don't really, it doesn't resonate with me, so I put it down. Fast forward to, it's probably close to 2 years now. I'm going down this journey where pursuit is beginning to become something, and I found Jay Shetty. So I'm watching this interview of Jay Shetty. He happens to be interviewing Kobe Bryant. It's the same interview I watched years before when Kobe said it was the Alchemist was his favorite book. I was watching from the lens of I'm listening to Kobe. This time I'm watching from the lens of I'm listening to Jay Shetty, but Kobe says it again. I'm like, I swear I have that book. Let me find it. I couldn't find it. I order on Amazon. It comes next day. I read it nonstop that night. I finish it. And it's like that book, I wasn't ready for it years ago. I was ready for it then. And when I read that book, all I thought about was Santiago being on his pursuit. And then I remembered back a couple of years ago, somebody asked me if I'd read it. I said no. And they said, you remind me of Santiago. And I didn't know what it meant. So now I'm reading it, and yes, I can see myself in Santiago, but also I can see that his journey is the pursuit. And like it all came to be. So like it's a really special book that like a lot of people will tell you it's a meaningful book to them.
Yeah, I recommend it. That's one of my first recommendations, man. But in this life, we have to go. Your intuition is God's gift, man. You know what I mean? It's a gift from the universe, if you will. You know what I mean? It's like, your intuition. You don't want to misconstrue that with opinion or anything, but if you feel something in your heart, and that's why I say embrace your love, and you go towards, believe in your inner thoughts, and that's why we have to do the work in terms of our mindset, right? Because we want to have beautiful inner thoughts. But if you go in that direction, man, you can't lose, you can't lose. And some of the most inspiring stories, I mean, if you look at Kobe Bryant, you take Kobe, he idolized Michael Jordan, and he ended up, adapting a lot of his mindset, and Kobe, man, rest in peace, man. One of my biggest inspirations, Mamba mentality, it's that whole Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours, do the work, man. And Chuck Close, one of my favorite painters, he said, inspiration is for amateurs, do the work, and, I mean, I think that's why I'm so, inspired by David Goggins, you know what I mean? And seeing his journey and his, you have to embrace the journey, whether it be hard or difficult or frustrating. That's going to lead you to that treasure that's buried for you, man.
Yeah, Kobe didn't just he talked like Jordan, walked like Jordan. He became Jordan. It's crazy.
Man. He became
my favorite thing with him is just like his commitment to the things he did, like having the movie that he made win the award. Or I don't know if you ever heard him talk about the book he wrote, or was part of writing a few books, and like he wanted to write books that would inspire people to read. They had sports in it, but like he picked expensive paper to print it on, and like the way the book was printed, he's like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right, and I want it to be something that people are going to like tie into. Like everything he did, that's what inspires me a lot about him. It's not so much the basketball stuff like that when I was younger, but I go back and watch YouTube videos of him all the time and just listen to him. And truthfully, I don't think there's been a celebrity death that has impacted me as much as Kobe. I think part of it is like him and Gigi and me being a father, but then also at the time of his death, I was consuming a lot of his business content. Like I just couldn't get enough of hearing him talk about the way he approached business. And I like he's a big inspiration for me as well.
One of my favorite pieces of art, man. I got a Kobe mural in Santa Ana at Ash Society, in Santa Ana, California, man. And it's just one of the projects I'm most proud of. And, it's looking at Kobe in his life, you learn that, I call it the Michelin effect. I named my daughter Alinea after Grant Ouch's restaurant Alinea in Chicago. And I kind of, it's like a metaphor, man. Like you want a Michelin star meal, right? But what it takes to go behind is everything has to be intentional and thought of and purposeful. Like if we're going to put, this piece of meat on this plate, we're going to get it from the best person that makes this particular type of meat. We're going to get, we're going to use the finest ingredients. And that's like the personification of Kobe. And I think that's one of the things I take away. Like, it's like, you're going to do it, man. Find a way to do it to, your highest quality, you know what I mean? Or your highest level, and if you're in pursuit of that, you can't miss on anything. It's like, if you take a job or something, man, you want to try to give it your best. You want to try to give, if it's connected to your passion, you want to give 110% to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, man, we went down a path that I did not have planned for us, which I love.
Man, this has been great, man.
I want to hit a few fun questions and then wrap it up. And I have no doubts that we will collab again on a future episode because there'll be plenty of other things to talk about. But my 5 questions I wanted to hit you with, kind of rapid fire style.
The
first one I already gave you a heads up on. I already know your answer, but not knowing you're going to wear your Knicks hat, round 2, Heat versus Knicks. Who you got?
Knicks, baby. The Knicks, baby. Jimmy B, we coming for you, man. Phenomenal performance by Jimmy Butler. But look, man, it's Knicks tape, blue and orange skies, man. We gonna do it this year, man. I've been hurting for a long time, so it's all.
I do think the NBA is better when the Knicks are good. Just like I think it's better when the Lakers are good too. Like I think maybe it's just the age we grew up in, but I knew that was an easy answer. Yeah. So second one, and maybe you've already mentioned it, but your favorite artist from a standpoint of actually art, like not music, because I got that coming next.
I gotta say, well, I'll give you my top 3, of course. Jean-Michel Basquiat, Rene Magritte, Salvador Dali, and then Andy Warhol.
So I have an embarrassing confession to make. I did not know again, not growing up in the arts. I didn't know who Basquiat was
Oh man.
until maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. But the crazy thing is, I have always liked his artwork. Like anytime I saw
Yeah.
his artwork come up,
You see that type of
I like
aesthetic.
I bought so I have a Peloton, and I gave so many referrals. I got like money for their store. I bought a sweatshirt that
For
had
sure.
this awesome artwork on it. It was a Basquiat artwork that they put on a Peloton sweatshirts. I didn't know who he was at this time, so it was really cool that I don't even remember how I figured out and connected it, but that all this art that I'd always seen over the years and liked, it was Basquiat's work. So
Hmm.
then last summer when I took Roma
Yeah.
to New York, we went to the exhibit and got to see some of the stuff in person. But it's kind of embarrassing to not have known who he is, but it was really cool that even though I didn't know who he was, his work always resonated with me. So I have like the skate deck behind me that is one of his pieces.
Oh
I
yeah.
have another
Yeah.
one that I swapped out. Like his stuff, I just think is
Yeah.
really, really cool.
And again, people would say, man, Basquiat, this guy can't paint. He draws like a child and stuff like that. He was a great, visual. He actually, some of his figure drawing is really awesome, and people don't really know that. But again, he was first. And now if any artist that takes, these, more childlike approach to their work and just writes anything on their canvas, it's automatically going to get compared to Basquiat because he's the first guy to really do that.
All right, so we're going to go to another area in art. Favorite musician?
Ooh,
I
man.
went musician to leave it open-ended. Like I was going to say favorite rapper, but maybe so we'll go musician. You got a lot of records back there.
Well, yeah. So right. So behind me on the turntables, I've got John Coltrane. Favorite things is probably like the song that I would take to Desert Island if I could only pick one. It was a song that I played for my daughter in the womb of my wife. But I have an affinity for jazz, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, again, because they're like the Kobe's and Jordans of, like, there's a story of Coltrane, after they got paid, he would go up to his room and everybody else would go out and party, and he would, go to his room and play the horn more. MC wise, I got Kendrick Lamar right now. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of who's out as of right now, of course, Tupac is a huge influence. Nip is another one. And, but then MCs, man, it's like your Dre 3000. I like your lyricists, man. I like lyricists, man. So your Dre 3000s, your Black Thoughts, Most Defs. But I think overall, man, like, like a national treasure, in terms of the beauty of a musician's career, Stevie Wonder is probably one of my guys too, cause he's, the emotional connection I get when I listen to Stevie or see people dance to Stevie Wonder's music, but I can go on and on, man. I got a ton of Michael Jackson was a big influence for me dance wise. Like I started dancing because of MJ. So
I used to, when I was,
that's a whole other
yeah, we did
conversation,
have a whole
man.
music conversation. When I was younger, I used to run down on the weekends and I would put Michael Jackson records on and I would dance around the house. And then I used to listen to a lot of Miles Davis, but jazz whenever I was studying for my licensing. So like to study for my CFP, I'd go to the library and I would just listen to jazz while I was writing, reading and studying.
Yeah, this is for anyone out there that needs an intro to Coltrane. You know what I mean? A Love Supreme, one of the most gorgeous albums ever created, man. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm 100% behind Kendrick. And I was serious in that comment. I need the Kendrick J. Cole combo like you did.
I got a Kendrick, Andy Warhol, Bob Marley piece that's like a huge piece, but I'm gonna have to make that for you, man. We're gonna make that happen. It's time to do a big, large form Kendrick. That's dope, absolutely. And I haven't done them in the style of the Pac, so yeah, we gotta get that
awesome.
going.
All right, so we got 3 questions down, and I had so this is like the way the universe works, right? So I wrote these questions down before we started. My next one was most impactful book.
Oh wow, man! So you know what? I'm gonna go with a recent, and I kind of knew that you had this one lined up for me, but this is The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, and the reason why I really dig this book, man, is because it came to me at a time where I really needed a different mindset shift, and this just talks about the power of the subconscious mind and your conscious mind. So. You hear the term "don't get in your own way." I had to really get a better understanding. Of course, another thing I'm reading right now, this is HBR's Emotional Intelligence. This is something that I kind of got on the table right now. But I really had to take a deep dive in terms of emotional intelligence, and I had to take a deep dive of understanding, my thoughts. And I think it says something like 85% of our thoughts can be negative from the time we wake up. You know what I mean? We have to kind of learn to feed our subconscious, you know, positivity and ideas of manifestation and abundance, like you said. So yeah, The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. If anybody wants to understand what their conscious and their subconscious thoughts are doing. So that's a dope one. But of course, The Alchemist is my, yeah.
I'll link to both of those other books as well. I have 6 questions actually. So the next one is, if you could pick one person to collab with on anything. So it could be art, it could be creative design. One person to collab with, who would it be?
Man, you know, I would have said Virgil, right? You know, rest in peace, Virgil Abloh, man. But if I can pick one person to collab with, oh man, that's a super tough question for me right now. You know, I'm gonna have to go with Henry Taylor. Henry Taylor is you're gonna have to Google him, man. Check out his art. He's a visual artist, and I love how he paints, you know, his subject matter super freely. You know what I mean? He has a wonderful aesthetic, man, and he's just one of those guys I want to meet and just have a beer with and just paint with. You know what I'm saying?
Right, well,
so I'll say him.
We got that out in the universe now. Somebody watching or listening to this knows somebody who knows him. So let's get this connection made, and that'll be really cool.
For sure, man. Henry Taylor, man, you out there, man. You know, you in LA, man. Holla at me, man. We gonna do
Not
something.
Too far away. All right, final question. Favorite tattoo? What's your favorite tattoo?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with I got a tattoo on my arm right here. I got got 2, but I got this one on my arm. My buddy, Miss Dr. Tolliver, man. If you're out there, man, it says God is my bodyguard. You know what I mean? So, that's my protection. You know what I mean? And, I got Personal Legend on my wrist, of course, and that's from The Alchemist. So that's probably close favorite, second.
All right. So this is the question I ask everybody on the way out. You are speaking as a keynote speaker. What's your walkout song? What are you coming out to?
Man, would I walk out to? Oh man. Man, another really good one, right? I think I'm gonna have to go with Funkin' Around by Outkast.
and this is my follow-up question that I like to ask people, because I think this is interesting. Is that song being played for you, or is it for the crowd, or for both?
I think it's for both, man. Because when I hear funk, and you're gonna have to check this Funkin' Around. I just did a post on Instagram about this song, but it was only on the Outkast Greatest Hits album, man. And every time I hear it, it just brings my spirit up. You know what I mean? And I think like it's one of those songs where when you listen to it, everybody's gonna start dancing as I come out. So I can kind of step out with some swag. You know what I mean? So check.
I'm a big Outkast fan, and I'm embarrassed to say that I can't hear that song in my head. But I know the reason why. I don't ever buy the greatest.
That was a Cudi.
I don't buy the greatest hits because I have all the albums, so I have all the greatest hits already. So I don't need to buy it. But I bet once I hear it, once I hear it, I'll recognize it.
Yeah, man. It's listen to Dre 3000's verse on that one, man. But it, like, when I play that song in the crib, man, I just start dancing, man. So when I walk out to give my speech, I'm coming out with some swag like this, you know, for sure.
I love it. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on. I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen. It's really cool the way that we connected. Like, we initially connected around the Future Proof conference last year, DMing back and forth.
And I gotta say, shout out to Advisor Circle, man. Shout out to my Future Proof family, man, for sure, man. That was dope. I met some great people, man, during that project.
And if it wasn't for that project, I probably wouldn't have ever discovered you and wouldn't know you. And now we have a friendship that's growing. And I told you, I think my summer trip with Leo is going to be out to San Diego, so we're going to get a chance to come see you, because I know you're not too far away.
Come to Diego, man. Man, and look, I just want to say thank you, man, and continue to do what you're doing. You're doing the great work, man. You're doing work that's inclusive. It's you know, you're touching a lot of different folks, man, and just continue on your mission, man. I'm supporting it 1010%, man. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate that as well. All right, man. Well, real quick, where can they find you? Where do you want to direct them so I can make sure I link to the right stuff?
Oh man, so I think YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, all that is Tony, that's TONY_CNCP. And just for some of my design work, that's TonyCNCP.com. And I guess lastly, TonyCBrown.net is all of my design work, but all of these things are linked up and links in bio. So, you can just look for me on those platforms, man. I hope to see you there.
Well, I'll link to those in the show notes, and don't get your Instagram taken down again, man.
Man,
we'll save that for another day.
Man, so another story, right? That's a whole other story, I swear, man. But look, it's a rebuild, man. We're gonna stay going for it.
All right, well,
yeah, thank you
again, Tony. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. As I asked you in the intro, I'll ask you on the outro. Head down to the comments, not for me, but for Tony. Let him know what about his story. What did he say motivated and inspired you? He took time to bring his knowledge and expertise to the show. And a lot of times it goes unthanked by the listeners. Let him know what resonated with him so he can see that he made an impact on this episode. I would greatly appreciate it. And make sure you go subscribe to his YouTube channel and subscribe to mine if you haven't either. So with that, we'll let everybody go.
All right,
Tony, thanks again. Everybody, thanks for joining me. It's an honor for you to join me on my pursuit. It's an even greater honor to be a part of yours. And as always, let's just keep pursuing.